All right. Hello, everyone, or those of you who will join us live. If you don't join us live, you can watch this on the replay. Happy Monday. This is December 11th. Happy holidays if you celebrate the holidays. I have a special guest tonight. This will probably be the last Q&A. And well, I probably will do one more stream before the end of the year, but I'm at a point where I do need a bit of a break myself from everything. So, but I have a special guest tonight, and we're going to talk about options trading. I think some of you know who Diamond Dave is, but Diamond Dave is someone I've been watching for a little while, and I've come to admire his work and his overall perspective on things that we're seeing in our world and in our society, and his business acumen. His business acumen is off the charts. So I have him backstage. I'm not going to waste time. I'm going to play my short intro, and then I will bring Diamond Dave up, and I have questions for him. And if, depending upon who's in the audience and what's asked, we'll weave your comments in as well. So everyone, I will see you on the other side of the intro, and we'll jump right in. Because of where I come from, see, in this world, we're all living in different worlds, and not everybody is privy to the same information. Well, gentlemen, thank you. Thank you for this second discussion on this controversial but important topic. Do either of you have any parting words?
I do. And it's just thank you for having us. I really appreciate it. You ask questions in such a way that I don't know what your perspective is. I think as a host, that's exactly perfect. It's difficult, but you get more on the table from guests if you're not the story. And I really, really appreciate talking to you.
All right. I appreciate that.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Anwar.
Because of where I come from, see, in this world, we're all living in different worlds, and not everybody is privy to the same information. All right, everyone. Well, before I bring Dave up, I just want to say, as you know, this channel has gone through a bit of an evolution since I started it. And now I'm focused on talking to other authors. I'm working on a book project myself, but also subject matter experts. So people who are experts in specific areas. And as you'll see, my guest tonight has a tremendous business acumen, and he is very experienced in the options trading arena. So I've been watching his content for a while, and I thought it would be cool if he would come and do a Q&A with me here on my channel. So with that, I want to respect his time, and I want to get the best out of the time. So everyone, with that, let me welcome up Diamond Dave. Diamond Dave, welcome.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Okay. Thank you for coming. All right. I want to respect your time. So you've seen the questions. So I will jump right in. So first of all, where does the nickname come from?
So the nickname really was just created as SEO purposes. So I wanted to figure out a name in which would be easy to SEO as opposed to my legal name, which is very, very common. So there's really no underlying message behind the name. It was just created for reasons. So if somebody typed my name into Google, it would be easier for it to come up because it was a unique name. So many people where their legal name is unique, if somebody types that in, it's easier for it to be found on Google. If your legal name is very common inside the United States, you're going to get washed out by a lot of other people, right? Even on a local level. So that was the only reason we came up with the name, is to really get people to kind of be able to, if they SEO'd it over time, and as I started to build more and more videos out saying it, my name appearing in certain things, it would be easier for it to find on Google as opposed to my legal name, which would be very difficult to find on Google. Okay. So for those who don't know, SEO, that's search engine optimization, and that deals with how individuals are able to find you, or how easily or uneasily they're able to find you online. Did I get that right? Yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right. And so from your content, well, I've gleaned a lot of things, but you're a former athlete as well.
Yeah, so not on a big time level, but I'm from a state where we play a lot of sports. So just grew up playing sports all the time. So that's pretty much my athletic background. So did play some JUCO, never really got past that level, but I wasn't like a top tier D1 athlete. But I'm from an area of the country to where we've produced so many athletes all across the board. Like I'm from the Orlando area. We've probably produced more golf athletes than whole states have produced. So the sports that most people would not even think about, we produce a large amount of athletes in those sports like golf, because think about Florida, you can play golf year round. So if you play down there, you have the ability to stay on the field or stay on the links all year. So you have the ability to get better, where in other parts of the country, you got to come off because of the weather. So it's a really, really big athletic scene in Central Florida slash Orlando. So you're raised playing a lot of sports. So it's very common to have people have a lot of success. So it's not something I really talk about, because I've known people that I was raised with that are playing professional ball. They retired to doing something else. And that's just really common to us.
Okay, see, I thought you were going to say football, because Miami is known for, well, you have those 3 universities there and all those guys from the U. But you said golf. You guys set out more golf players than any other state.
Yeah, we put out, I wouldn't say any other state, but in the majority of states, because most states you can't play golf except maybe 6 months out the year. Where in Central Florida, you can play golf year round. It may be too hot for you to play, but you can't play. So that's one of the reasons why guys like Tiger Woods, when he's at the height of his career, he was living in Central Florida, because it just allowed him to play all the time when he wasn't out on the tournament. So it's just a really good golf environment. It's a really good baseball environment. It's a really good football environment because of the weather. And we just have a culture around people being very active.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I did take a look at everyone. David has a vast library, and he has several playlists on his channel. So I did take a look at your Laws of Game playlist, and you mentioned an interesting name that I heard before. I didn't know that I would hear the name on your channel, but Dr. Amos Wilson, you mentioned him being one of your major influences. I learned of him through someone else in the cyberspace, but the fact that you mentioned him is significant as well. Do you want to say a few words about Dr. Amos Wilson and his significance?
Yeah, definitely. So he was somebody that really taught me how conditioning and psychology really shapes people, and how it shapes how they conduct themselves, about like environmental psychology, things of that nature, to kind of really get me to understand that often people can be acting out in an environment and may not be aware of it. And so they may not be aware of what they're doing, but what they're doing may be negative to their success or to their forward progression. So that's something that he really digs deeply in, and trying to people to really get to understand is that your environment has been curated by other people to get a result out of you. And then the question is the result that they're getting out of you positive or negative? And so this is why I would often ask people questions about their narrative around what a lot of Black people do. Like, where does it come from? How was it created? I'm talking about Black people inside the United States. And often they can't reply is because they don't really understand what's driving a lot of this behavior. And a lot of it's psychological. And it's because they haven't really sat down to do the time to examine it. It's easier just to keep going through the motions without really sitting down and kind of examining, why am I doing what I'm doing? And what is the psychological motivation that's determining a drive in my behavior? What do I think I'm going to get out of doing these activities? To start examining why you're doing what you're doing.
Okay. I've never heard that before. Your environment is curated.
Yeah, definitely.
So in other words, well, everything we see happening around us, it's been premeditated and pre-thought out, and we're just players on a chessboard. Is that kind of what it?
Yeah, I mean, so let me give you an example. If you were to build a society,
yes,
would you want it to go the way you wanted it to go? Would you want it to go the way somebody else wants it to go?
The way I want to go.
Exactly. So you have to build the conditions to make it work that way. So just like we were born, this world was already here. We didn't build it. So the people that built it to get a desired result. And then everybody just plays their position in that. So the question is, what position are you playing? But let me give a really quick example. If you ever get into like the e-commerce game, we have something that we call like sales funnels. The goal is to bring somebody through a process to get a desired result out of them. Right? So you build the process. So you build the environment, and then you build the conditions in the environment to get the result out of them. Will it be 100%? No. But the goal is to get enough of that desired result to maintain what you're doing. So I just think a lot of people, and it's not their fault, it's just their socialization and their conditioning. They may think this stuff just happens organically. It doesn't. And I'm not talking about a conspiracy theory. What I'm trying to get people to understand is that if you were to build an environment, you're going to build it for it to go the way you want it to go if you're intelligent. So if you would do that, why do you think the world you live in hasn't been built for people to have it go the way they want it to go? And so that's what Amos Wilson tries to get people to understand. So you just got to kind of understand what role do you play in that, and whether that role is going to be beneficial or detrimental to you. Because to be real with you, this society needs people to go to prison, because we need people to justify the prison industrial complex. These are for-profit business ventures. The state needs to get that money from people, things of that nature. So therefore, if we build prisons, we have to put people into prison. So we need people to be socialized to go to prison. Just like we need people to be socialized to go to the military. We need people to be socialized to play sports where I'm from. We need people to be so we need people to play all these roles. So then the question is, who are the people that we're going to get to play this role? But the role has to be filled by somebody.
Okay. Wow, there's a lot there. All right, let's segue into options trading. So
Okay.
how did you get to where you are now as an options trader and a teacher? And did you have businessmen and women in your family that led you down this path, or did you find this path yourself?
So I really found this path, I wouldn't say myself, but I was with a guy and he taught me a course on how like the overall stock market works. And then in that course, he taught about options just as a kind of like an accessory to it. So the course is really based around how the overall market functions. I learned about options. It sparked my interest. And then he sold me also what we call alerts, where every morning I would wake up, he would tell me, these are the plays I'm looking at from the option standpoint, and you can consider playing this, yes or no. And what I did was, because I wanted to really learn what was going on, I took that information and I tried to reverse engineer the justification behind what he was doing. And if I couldn't figure it out, I wouldn't play it. If I could, I would consider maybe playing it. And I did that for like maybe a year and a half. And that's how I learned the options game. So I already kind of understood how the overall market functions. And then I transferred that into the options market, which is a derivative of the equities market. And then I reverse engineered this guy I was paying to give me alerts for about a year and a half to kind of understand the narrative and the rationale behind what he was doing. And that's kind of how I taught myself how to trade.
Okay. So there was a lot of self training involved.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So yeah, so your financial playlists are vast, and some videos go into some very, very granular details about business markets and technical analysis for numerous companies and stocks. So when I heard you start talking about puts in one of your videos, I mentally went back to the period when I started reading the Rich Dad, Poor Dad books and was introduced to stocks, calls, puts, technical analyses, etc.
Okay.
One of the key concepts that you repeatedly discuss in your content is understanding the markets. Describe your transition. I guess this builds upon the previous question. Describe your transition from your academic education to your current station, where you've learned to understand the markets, trends, and how businesses thrive and fail.
Yeah, I mean, it really was just trying to figure out like why so many people were unsuccessful in business. So, on the internet and really over the past maybe 10, 15, 20 years, there's been a big push, a lot of people online to tell people to go into business and to make it seem like it's just the easiest thing in the world to do. And you just have to do it and you'll be successful. And I was running into a lot of people that were unsuccessful and trying to figure out why so many people were unsuccessful if everybody was telling you it was so easy. And one of the reasons is, one, we don't really understand how markets function. So we're in a market, but we don't really understand how markets function. And one thing that human beings do when they don't understand something, they just make something up. The problem is if you're operating under something that's just made up, it's not going to work for you anyway because it's not true. So trying to figure out how can we solve the problem of having people get a level of success in business by really understanding the fundamentals of business, how markets actually function, how these things work, how they're composed, who the players are, and not just from a conspiratorial or just a talk about how you can understand it and go out into the market and have success by engaging in these situations.
Okay. Now, this is a bit of this is probably a beginner's question, but for the audience, when we're talking about markets, so you're talking about different sectors, right?
No, I'm just talking about the fundamentals of a market. So a marketplace would be where producers, I would say producers or suppliers and buyers interact to just exchange goods and services.
Okay.
right? So the challenge is that we have millions of Americans that don't even know what a market is, but they're in markets all the time. So there's a market for their labor, there's a market for their time, there's a market for their attention. They're engaged in markets every time they go out of their house. They're engaged with markets online, but they don't know what one is. So then how do you go into business and you don't know what a market is? So this is the issue. So what I found is that there's a lack of fundamental understanding of the environment. We talked again about environment that has been built before we got here. There's a lack of a fundamental of understanding of the environment that we're living in. And then what we do is we do what all humans do. When we don't understand something, we just make something up to fill the gaps in our brain. The problem is that if what you made up is not true, it's going to be difficult for you to be successful because what you believe is the truth. It's not the truth.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess most people are involved as consumers and as employees, but most people don't understand. Well, they don't understand it in from the perspective that a business person would understand it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So a huge portion of your library is devoted to options trading. You are an options trading a teacher. You kind of discussed this a little bit already, but what led you to get involved and become a teacher in options trading? Can you break that down for the layperson what exactly that is?
Yeah. So
trading.
Yes, sir. So first off, let me break down what an option is. So an option is a derivative of an equity. So it's derived from an equity. So an equity would be defined as a stock. So you have what we call the stock market, the overall stock market, and then a derivative of something that's derived from that stock market, we're going to call the options market. So the options market is also going to be known as a derivatives market. What got me into doing the options market, because it was a way to get people into trading, and the cost of entry is going to be a lot lower than traditional equities. So options have a large amount of leverage, and the cost of barrier to get in can be a lot lower than traditional equities. So the goal initially was to get people in that traditionally would be ignored by the equities market, to get them into the options market, to really start understanding the market, economics, things of that nature, because you have to understand these things to be a successful trader, right? So if you're going to have success in this market long term, you have to understand the overall market around you, how that works, for you to have long-term success, not just short-term success. And then once we can produce enough people and we've been successful understanding the markets and how to interact these markets and how to really change their perception of the world, it builds a confidence in them. They're able to go out in the world and be successful because they can look at situations differently than the average person and not just be reactionary, but be proactive.
Okay. So everyone, I think this is significant because this is a different mindset, a different skill set from going and getting a 4-year degree, or in my instance, a PhD.
Okay.
You're trained in a discipline. This is a different way of looking at the world. It's a different way of generating income. So I think that's one of the significances of this. And it's funny. I first heard about this in, I mentioned Robert Kiyosaki, Cash Flow 202, and I wasn't any good at it,
Okay.
in that game. But that was the first time I heard about this. Okay, so this is an area of the stock market. Do you want to talk just briefly about the difference between investing and trading? A mentor tried to impress upon me that there's a difference between the two. From your vantage point, is that accurate?
No. So investing in, because I could say, hey, you know what? I'm going to give X amount of my hours to a situation,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to invest in that. So we're talking about investing from so we could just take it from an investing from a financial standpoint. To me, all investing is trading. So everything in my mind is a trade, right? So let me give an example. If I'm buying in the SPY, which is the SPY ETF, which is essentially an ETF that represents the S&P 500, right? And I'm buying that in 2023 with the goal of building it up over the next 20 years for my retirement. That's a trade, because eventually what I'm going to have to do is sell that position. So even though I may be waiting 20 years to sell it, I'm building up a position to sell it back into the market at a later date. So if you go to a certified financial planner or any financial planner, they're going to tell you, hey, invest in your 401k, invest in these index funds. The goal is when you start getting ready to retire, to sell that back into the market, right? But that is a trade. So it's all trading. You're exchanging your labor to generate the money. Then you're taking your money, you're going into this marketplace, you're buying this position with the goal of selling it at a later date at a higher price point. It's a trade, even though your time horizon may be extended compared to somebody else. It's all a trade. So what I want people to understand is that people want to look at everything as a form of a trade and then understand the elements of a trade so they can put themselves in the best position to be successful and not let the terminology around the space confuse them, because a lot of people play terminology games without really understanding fundamentally what they're talking about. So what we try to do is make sure that when you sit down at a table with somebody, they can't play terminology games with you when it comes to these markets, because you actually understand how they function. Because you may notice coming out of the space in which you come out of, a lot of things are hidden behind language. So if you understand the language and then you can deconstruct the language and really break it down to what it actually means, they can't hide things behind language. But often when they're dealing with us, they can create scenarios based around the markets and use language and hot button us and provoke us. And we don't understand what's really going on because we don't understand the language that's being used. So to me, everything is a trade, right? If I say, hey, you know what? I'm going to work, generate this amount of money, and then go to the store and buy something from this particular vendor, right? That I just made a trade. I traded my time to generate the money to get his product because I believe it has a value. He traded because he had to do work to generate the product or buy from somebody else. We're all trading. So that's why I want people to understand we're involved in markets all the time, whether we know it or not. So when we don't really know that we're in a market and we don't know how to navigate them properly, we're at a disadvantage to everybody else that actually knows what is going on and know how to navigate properly.
Okay, I have a question from someone here in the chat, but before I get to that, so David, so from your vantage point and from your experiences, have you seen that because people in this country, they go to college and medical school, law school, and they're well trained in their field, but then they're supposed to grow their 401k, so they're supposed to start saving in those, and then someone has to show it. Well, they're expected to make the right decisions in terms of where to invest that. Do you see a huge deficit in professionals who come out of school?
When you say deficit, what do you mean?
This knowledge of markets and because this is a whole other galaxy you're talking about here.
Yeah, definitely, because it hasn't really been their field of study. So let's say hypothetically, I want to go to school to become a doctor. I have to lock in on that. Or if I want to get a PhD in any field, I got to lock into that because it's a very narrow and deep area that I'm going into. So it means that I may not have the time at that moment to really study another area. So often they'll just be told to just invest in an overall index fund. There's nothing wrong with that, but just understanding that there may be other opportunities for you that you may not be aware of because you weren't able to spend the time to focus on this particular area. So then the question may be is, can I build a network of people that understand these different areas and I trust their counsel in that area to give me a heads up on what I don't know? The same way if I go to a doctor, I'm trusting his counsel in the area because I didn't have the time to study medical science.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir.
Okay. This question is from Ray Alexander. He says, Diamond Dave, are you an options broker?
So, Mr. Alexander, I would ask you to explain, what do you mean by options broker? Because when we're talking about language before, I want to make sure we're on the same page as far as the language. So when you say options broker, can you kind of explain to me what you mean by that? And then we can pick that up later on in the conversation if he can offer that explanation.
Okay, Ray, if you want to elaborate on that, I will revisit it. But for now, I'm going to move on. To all the viewers watching this, I encourage you to go look at David's vast playlists. On this channel, me and some others, we're not experts, we're not giving advice, but we talked about the basics of personal finance, budgeting, etc. Is there an optimal financial position one should be in terms of their personal finances before getting into options trading?
I would tell people to not have outrageous debt. So, I would encourage everybody to make sure that before you do anything, make sure that your debt is at a position where you can service it properly. I don't think that I'm a good fit for you if you're desperate, if you can't pay your bills, if you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, because to learn how to trade properly is going to take time. So I'm not a life preserver type guy. I don't tell people if you come with me, you'll be off your job in 60 days. Or if you come with me, you'll be rich in 90 days. I don't tell people that. So what I would tell people is that to make sure you're in a position to where you can manage your affairs to where you in this space will be detrimental to your other affairs, right? Because I think a lot of people, what they do is they wait till they're in a precarious financial position and they start looking for a Hail Mary out of that position, and it puts them in an even worse position. As opposed to saying, you know what, before I get into a bad position, let me start doing the work now so then I don't end up in a crash or wreck before I want to try to do something about it. But we know the thing about human nature, it often is difficult for us to be proactive. It's more easy for us to be reactionary. So often we don't want to do anything until we're already at the bottom of our situation. But that's often when it can be most difficult to get you some help.
Okay. Well, what's interesting is that when you say servicing your debt and not having debt, that means also controlling your personal finances, your spending, your purchases, controlling your impulses. So a prerequisite to getting involved in the trading arena is, managing your personal finances.
Yeah, definitely. Everybody's going to have, if you went to school, you got a home, you're going to have some debt. But what I mean is that to the point to where you can't pay it, you're so stressed out and you think that options trading is going to be this miracle to get you out of that situation. It doesn't really work that way, because if you're impulsive in your normal life, you're going to be impulsive in the market. So you're going to take everything you're doing day to day, you're going to take that directly into the market. So if you can't control your impulses, you can't control your behavior. When you go into the market is going to expose that very quickly, because you're going to do the exact same thing in the markets. And that's something a lot of people find out really quickly, is that you can't hide in this environment. It's designed to expose you psychologically.
Okay. Well, David, I just thought of one question. This is a little bit off script, but your students, the ones who tend to do well, what attributes do they have? Are they patient? Do they listen to everything you say? I mean, they must be able to control their impulses. What makes what attributes do your most successful students have?
Definitely, that's a great question. So my most successful students, they're what I call self-starters. They have a desire for autonomy, right? So they really don't like the fact that they're dependent upon other people to make all of their money. They have a strong desire to be successful. They don't allow setbacks to defeat them. And they have a goal that they're willing to work towards, right? So if they have a goal, they're locked in on the goal and they don't care what else happens, because they're locked in on the goal. So they really believe that me being successful in this area is part of a puzzle to get me what I want to get out of life. And they just lock in on it. And that's something I've seen from all the people that have had success dealing with me. They're just very focused on what we're doing and how they can use that. Because I'm not the Holy Grail. I'm a part of a puzzle. But they're able to use what we're talking about here to build out the life that they want, right? But they're not jumping from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. Those people are really successful in what we're talking about.
Okay. Yeah, I imagine that makes a big deal, because when you're launching off into something new, you might not be successful right away.
Definitely.
And we live in a microwave society.
Yeah.
Okay. Everyone watching this, if you have questions for Dave, I have a few more. If you want to ask those in the chat, please ask those in the chat. I'll read them if they're reasonable. Please smash the like button also. And if you want to, the super chat is live. My Cash App and PayPal are there if you want to donate something to the channel. Okay. So this was powerful. And I don't know if I should mention the person you were talking about. All right. It was the Kevin Samuels video. That's a bad word. But in one of your videos, I'm saying that jokingly, in one of your videos, you stated that you're an evangelist for helping people get their finances and economics together. Hence, your verbiage and most of your videos about who you're seeking to help. Your about page states that your videos are geared towards people becoming successful options traders. And when I watch your content, I further observe that you have your own distinct tribe there. Is that your stock market sharks group? Do you want to say a few words about that group and what it is?
Yeah, so I mean, the stock market sharks, we were pretty much everybody that bought my course,
mm-hmm.
and that's hung around in our Discord. So we have a Discord in which people conversate. I got other traders in there which we talk, because one of the biggest challenges is when you do anything new, is you often don't have a bunch of people to talk about that thing. So years ago, to do a really quick story, I was a media buyer to buy Facebook ads for small businesses. And one of the ways in which I learned how to do it is there was media buying groups on Facebook. And so what I did was I went into those groups and I just talked to people all day about Facebook ads. So I immersed myself in the space. So there's something very similar, like if you try to get an advanced degree, you have to go very deeply in that particular area. I think a lot of people think that you can be successful kind of like sticking your toe into the water or something. It doesn't always really work that way if you want to get really good at something. Sometimes you got to say, I'm going to take the next 2 years of my life and I'm just going to do just this thing, right? Not saying that, neglect your family or your faith or your health. What I'm saying is that just get really into that thing because it allows you to accelerate your learning. So the stock market sharks are the people that bought the course, and that's the name of the Discord group. And it's really designed to allow people and to help people get an edge in the markets because they have other people that can talk about the markets. And one of the things you want to understand, and this is what going back to Amos Wilson, one of the ways in which our environment is curated is what's the topic. So when we're looking at our environment, what the topic is curates people's attitudes because what's going on inside their head now is dominating their behavior. So we're in a market-based environment. We're in a country to where business and economics is really dominant in our society. And we have a bunch of people that claim they want to do better, but don't understand anything about these issues. They don't talk about it. It's not their conversation. Well, the problem is that you're showing up at a game and you don't understand how to play the game. And so that's one of the challenges that we have is that when I'm talking about being an economic evangelist, many of the things that we deal with in this country, they boil down to economics. We don't understand that, so we let people tell us it's these other things. It's never really been. If you really study this country, you study the reason why they founded it, you study the reason why the United States or the revolutionaries rebelled against the UK, you study the issues behind the Civil War, there's an economic reason behind all of this. It's people feeling like their desire to build themselves economically was being curtailed or being restricted, and they wanted to do something about it. When we look at a lot of the issues that we had in the early 1900s after the Civil War by like Anglo-Saxon mobs, it was that they were in contest against our economic mobility. So we keep seeing the same narrative over and over again, but if for some reason in 2023, we were rather in a place to where we can't discuss economics on any level because we don't understand it. So again, what we do is we make up stuff as being the reason why we're in the situation that we're in. Because we don't understand that we're in an economic war against other groups of people. But because we don't understand that, we can't speak to it so that we make up the reason why we're in the situation that we're in.
Okay. Does that mean, I get myself in trouble for this, but does that mean every problem is not because we're Black or because, well, is it a lack of economic knowledge? Is it, are those usually the drivers of most problems, the economics?
Well, they're a big part of it. So it can be that you're Black, but I can say, well, because you're Black, I don't want you to have any kind of economic strength.
Okay.
So it's not just because you're Black, right? So I'm from Florida. There was a community in Florida called Rosewood. That was a self-sustaining community. They were doing very well. So they burned that community down. Did they do it because they were Black? Yes, they also did it because they had a level of economic prosperity. Right. So the color is a part of it, but it's really the economic piece because in economics, there's competition. So if I believe I'm better than you because of the color of your skin, I definitely don't want you to be better than me economically. Right. So I think that's what we have to understand. Does a color play a role into it? Yes, but the economics plays a big role because we're dealing with a tribe of people where the sole reason they came to this part of the world is an economic reason. We're taught they came over here for religious freedom. That is incorrect. They came over here to pursue an economic reason. And then they rebelled against the British because of an economic reason. So much of the history of the United States is based around an economic justification to do what they're doing. They later on create another narrative around it to justify the behavior, to make it more palatable, but it really is an economic reason.
Okay. I think that segues into my next question. because in addition to your vast your teaching videos where you're talking about the specifics of technical analysis and the market's going this way and the market's going this way, and did it make sense that this company made this move? You also do create content on social and political issues, but what I'm seeing is, as we just discussed, at the bottom of everything, undergirding most of your discussions, you're challenging people to take a look back at the economics and what are the economic drivers behind the things that we're seeing. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, because again, based on everything I've studied, the justification behind what these people are doing is economic, right? So we've been taught it's these other things, so we never look at that. And then what we do is we fill our heads with the wrong information, and then we think we're smart. So then we're never going to be competitive with people. You know what I'm saying? So like if you show up at a football game and you think the game we're playing is basketball, well, you can't win because we're playing football. And then what I'm doing is I'm telling you, though, that we're playing basketball. And the reason why you're not winning because you're not really good enough at basketball, but in reality, we're playing football. So then you go become a basketball expert. Still can't beat me because we're playing football. We're not playing basketball. So we can't really deal with certain situations. So let me give an example really quick. We talk about food deserts, right?
Yes.
And this area is a food desert. Now, this is 100% correct. I'm from Orlando. There's an area that my grandma used to live in. You can go Google it, called Washington Shores. It's the first Black suburb of the city of Orlando, right? The first suburb, not the first area. Now, for years, Washington Shores was a food desert. There was no grocery store in that area. So you had a kind of working class area where people did not have a grocery store in their immediate area. There was a lot of things they had to do to try to go out and get food. So now this narrative of food desert, food desert, food desert. Here's the issue. If you look at the earnings of any grocer in the United States that's publicly owned, their margins are very thin. They're sometimes 5% or less, which means that after they do all their business, there's very little profit they bring home. If you look at a lot of lower income areas, theft is very high in retail. So what you're telling a store to do is to put a store in your area and they already have small margins, and then theft is going to be very high. Well, you know what happens? You can run them out of business. So it's not just that they don't put a store there because they don't like Black people. It may not make business sense for them to put a store there because I got to put a store in an area and you're going to steal from me so much, and I'm already dealing with small margins. So then it just doesn't make business sense. Or I put a store in your area and I have to mark the prices up extremely high because I'm taking a risk premium, which is that I'm taking a risk to do to pursue this economic opportunity. I'm taking a large risk. So I got to make sure that I charge more to justify me being in this area. It's not always because you're Black. So when we don't understand these things, we let people come and say, well, you know what, there's no store in your area because you're Black. They just don't like you. Without understanding is that their margins are already 5% or less. So what we need to do is go look at Walmart, go look at Kroger, go look at Albertsons. I don't know another grocer. Publix is not publicly owned. And you can go on Yahoo Finance and look at their margin of profit. And so they have to manage that margin of profit and not let people steal from them so much that it doesn't make business sense for them to do. And you've seen Walmart over the past 2 to 3 years pull their footprint out of certain areas because, wow, they were stealing from them too much. So when we don't understand economics and we think we understand economics because we understand words and things of that nature, and we produce all these people, and I'm going to say this, and I'm not trying to mess your show up.
That's all right.
But we produce all of these Black people with their formal degrees, and none of them understand why we don't have grocery stores. And so we haven't been able to solve this problem yet. And we just keep talking about, oh, it's because we're Black. No, it's not. And so this is the issue. We can never solve our problems until we understand the economic drivers behind what's really going on. And then we can start to understand our position in this society and how to solve it. So if we're going to put a grocery store in the area, we have to condition the people to not steal from the grocer for so much that he can't afford to be over here anymore. But we don't want to deal with that part of it. We just want to say, well, they don't want to do it because you're Black. So then nobody has access to fresh foods because we just want to play these games with each other. That's our problem.
Okay. All right. I'm sure you've gotten this question before a zillion times. Ray Alexander says, are you authorized or licensed with a brokerage firm to buy or sell stock options?
So you don't need to be licensed to buy or sell stock options. You don't need to be licensed to do that.
Okay.
Right? All you got to do is open up a brokerage account and start buying and selling. So this is where the education piece got to come in. You don't have to be licensed to buy or sell options. Just like you don't have to be licensed to buy or sell equities. You can just open up a brokerage account and start buying it. You don't need any license to do that, right? So I'm not authorized or licensed, and no one can give you authorization because it's not necessary. And I'm not licensed because it's not necessary for me to do it.
Okay.
Yes, sir. That's a great question, though.
And then this one, he has another one. He says, are you licensed in any state to advise consumers or investors on the purchase of stock options or commodities options?
Okay, so I don't advise people on purchase of stock options or commodities options. I don't tell people this is what you should buy, right? And two, there's nobody that is licensed to do that, right? So the licensing game doesn't work that way. So again, I think that there's a lack of education around licensing and certification in this particular space. So even if you get a Series 7, you're not able to advise consumers or investors on what to buy, right? Also, if you get a Series 7, you have to be sponsored by a business for you to be able to take the test through FINRA, right? So then the problem is that you have to essentially work for somebody else to get sponsored by them to take it. And then you still got to work for them to make sure you maintain everything. That just to me wasn't a good option. But yeah, you don't have to be licensed to buy. And I don't tell anybody what they should buy. I don't tell people what to buy.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, everyone.
That's a great question. I didn't mean to cut you off. That's also a great question, though. Because like I said, there's a lack of education in this space from our people around licensing and certification. And we often think the people. So let me say something real quick to the audience.
All right.
If somebody says they're certified, you want to ask them who certified them. Who are they? If somebody tells you they're licensed, who gave them the licensing? Because many people that are telling you that they're certified have the ability to market themselves with somebody else's branding while telling you that they're certified. So it's different than you talk about you having a PhD. You get a PhD from a college. That's different. Or you are an attorney and you take a bar exam. Or you're a CPA and you get a CPA from the state. People are telling that they have certifications or they have licenses. The question is, who is the organization that certified them and who are they? And then if they're licensed, who is the organization that licensed them and who is that organization? Because I can license somebody to do something right now, but what does that mean? So this is where I talk about reading books like The Crowd, where you learn about stuff called authority badges, where somebody has a badge that's designed to give them authority, but behind that badge, it really means nothing. But they know that people see this as an authority. So this is why you see people in the military come out with all the medals and stuff. Why? Because it makes them seem authority. We don't know what they did to get that medal, but they know that it puts in people's mind that I must be somebody because I have all this stuff on my chest. We have to be wary of these things because these type of things are being used against us, right? And we're being exempted or put out of position on a lot of environments because we're playing licensing and certification games in areas in which these things are not necessary to understand what's going on. Right? And I think and I said again, we produce thousands of people with these licenses and certifications and nothing has changed. So what is a license and a certification doing for people?
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, everyone, if you have any other questions, I'm at the end of mine here. So, and also I would encourage you, I'm going to ask Dave to talk about his channel when we finish up, but I would encourage you to subscribe and listen to what he talks about there in his library and also live every week. So you'll probably think this is a funny one. Years ago, when I expressed an interest in stocks, a relative warned me against them getting involved with that due to risk.
Okay.
So for individuals who were never trained in stocks or options training, what advice would you give them in terms of getting started, but also staying hopeful and continuing the path to becoming successful in the area?
Well, you have to define what risk is to you. So when somebody tells you don't buy, when they were talking about stocks, they're talking about buying individual stocks, they're talking about buying index funds.
Well, at that time, I was talking about just getting involved. And I had one relative say you should get involved, and then another one said no, I wouldn't get involved because people are losing money over there, and those things are risky, and people lose money in the stock market.
Okay, so and he didn't give you incorrect advice. I mean, people lose money every day, right? The thing is that, so let me give an example to the audience. What do you think is more risky? You get in your car and you drive it down the street, or you buying a stock? Now, we know from DOT, was going to be Department of Transportation data, that people die every day behind the wheel. So why do we believe that that's not risky? So we're going back again to Amos Wilson talking about creating an environment and socializing people, how you want to conduct themselves in the environment. You driving from state to state is extremely risky because of the amount of people that die on the road every day. But most people don't perceive it as risky. They just, hey, I'm going to go drive from one state to another. And they don't perceive the risk involved in their behavior. Everything has a risk associated to it. The question is, what benefit do you think you're going to get from the activity that's worth the risk that you're taking? So one of the things I've been able to educate people on, and we talk about again, is that this information is publicly available. There's something when you go into any market called a risk premium. What is the premium that you need to get off this particular activity to justify the risk that you're taking, right? So if I'm looking at a market, any market-based activity, I'm always looking at it in comparison to the Treasury. Because inside the United States, the Treasury is what we call a risk-free or a guaranteed rate of return. So I always baseline everything based on the Treasury. So if the Treasury pays, for example, 5%, the activity that I'm involved in has to be greater than what I could get from the Treasury, or why would I do it? Now, Treasury is currently right now not paying 5%. From my understanding, they could be, I don't know. But if I'm looking at any economic activity, the return has to be greater than the Treasury, because I could just go buy the Treasury and sit back and get the guaranteed rate of return. So to me, when I'm looking at risk, I'm looking at, do I believe the return from this activity is going to be greater than the guaranteed rate of return to justify the activity? And that's even if I'm buying an index fund. So what we see in the market, if you really study it, is that as Treasury yields start to go up, we often see people leave equities and go into Treasuries because why? I don't have to take any risk to get the return. So I would tell anybody in any marketplace environment to consider the Treasury. Like I said, we don't get financial advice, but to consider the Treasury as the baseline for all their activity, because you are going to take some risk, but you take a risk in everything that you do, right? You walking across the street, there's a risk. A car could jump a curve and kill you, right? You eat a particular piece of food, there's a risk. You don't know the food could be contaminated. There's a risk in everything you do. Do you believe the benefit or the implied benefit that you're going to get from the activity justifies the risk that you're taking?
Okay. All right. And also when people get started in your academy, it's also important to continue to associate with the folks in the academy, right? And not wander out into their families and say, hey, I'm doing stock trading and I'm doing options, because people who are not involved will not understand, and you might not have that that support system.
Yeah, definitely. Like one of the reasons why we created the Discord and we do like bi-weekly meetups is for people to try to get some sense of community. Because often when you're doing something, we again talk about environment. Human beings are pack animals. They don't want to be outside of the pack. So if you're the only person that you know doing something, it can be very lonely. So try to help people create some sense of community so they don't drop out of what they're doing, because you may find out that I'm the only person in my family that has an economic focus. So I feel like I'm an oddball, or I feel like I'm the odd person out. So I wouldn't tell them not to speak to their family. What I would tell them is that just explain to your family what you're doing, and to let your family know, hey, I'm trying to do this to improve situations for not only myself, but for my family, and to just stay consistent, right? But we are at a major disadvantage in this society because we don't understand economic situations. So we're not a really good help to ourselves. And what we think we know, we don't know even after people have been formally educated around this issue. Right now, I do have a background in e-commerce business management. But the problem is that we produce people with way more education than me in these areas for the past 50, 60 years, and nothing has changed. So there's something going on to where the formalized education is not getting the results that we desire. And I don't think the solution, and I'm not against formalized education, I have one, but I don't think the solution is more formalized education, more licensing, more certifications when those things have not produced the results. If you are a reader, what's the brother's name that wrote Miseducation of the Negro? Forgot his name. He was one of the first PhDs to come out of Harvard. So he had a PhD in Harvard in the early 1900s. So what I want people to understand is that the idea that you can be educated to solve your problem from somebody else can often be a fool's errand. That's something I talk about in my video. Something else I also learned from Amos Wilson, right? We've been educated to solve other people's problems, not educated to solve our problems. So this is one of the reasons why we have the education and none of the problems get solved, right? Other groups know we have to educate ourselves to solve our problems. So they'll go get a formalized education, especially if you're dealing with the Chinese. They'll go get to formal education, but they also inside their group have solutions to their problems to help themselves out. I didn't want to go off on a tangent, but sorry.
No,
okay,
no, that's okay, because that's a big that's something that we're facing, is that I think that it's thought that going to get, well, as you described, formalized education, a bachelor's degree, a PhD, a MD, a JD, that will solve most things. And once you get those, you'll be living an affluent, comfortable, upscale life. But that's not always the case, and it doesn't necessarily benefit the group as a whole. So no, that's important. And then my follow-up question, I'm going to get to some of these other questions here in the chat. When you say they have solutions for their own problems, what does that mean? Does that mean that they all huddle up and they say, okay, well, we need to buy up a block of this city so we can grow our own businesses, or we need to put more grocery stores in our neighborhoods? Like, what does that mean?
Just what you said. So education is one thing, socialization is something different.
Yep.
So something Amos Wilson got us to understand is that you could take a black person, you could take a white person, give them equivalent education. The white person will go look into create markets, control markets, take territory, take land, control environments. Why? Because that's a socialization. The black person will just look to generate income from their education. Why? Because that's a socialization. So what we often confuse education and socialization. We confuse it. I think we think that's equivalent. So we think if I just go get education, I've been socialized to be competitive in this environment. You may not have been. A person will come from China. They've been socialized from in their environment by their group. Your job is to go to America. Your job is to learn as much as you can from them so you can beat these people one day. Your job is just not to get education and just say, I made it. No, your job is to go over here, learn what you can learn from them so you can beat them, right? Latinos are coming over here for economic opportunity, and they're working as a group to get economic opportunity, and they know they're working against other people, so they're trying to deny other groups so they can get the opportunity. We've been socialized that just getting the education is the accomplishment. And then when that doesn't work, we don't know what else to do. We just, let me go get another license, right? So it's the lack of socialization around what is actually going on to me is a detriment. We talked about going to school. We have a lot of data to show that many of us go to school. We carry more debt than other groups, and we have less wealth than other groups, even though we have an equivalent education as them. So it can't just be the education piece. So this is something that we really need to come to terms with. We're trying to educate ourselves out of this situation. I'm not against the education, but we want to maybe discover or ask ourselves, what else can we add to this to make ourselves more competitive outside of just the formal education? Because we have the formal education. We're not dumb people. We've proven that. How come we're still having a lack of ability to compete in this environment, even with an equivalent of sometimes even greater education than other groups of people? We know we're not done. We know what we've done in this country. We know what we've accomplished. We know how we benefited this country. So we just want to start kind of asking ourselves a question. Maybe there's a little bit more to us being competitive than just getting a formal education. Because we're being beat by people that don't have any education. These people coming over from Mexico, what school they went to, what college they went to. So people got to really start asking themselves these questions. These people are not leaving Asia because they're successful. They're getting their ass beat in Asia. That's why they're coming over here, right? We're not getting their top people. We're getting the people that are not making it over there. They're coming over here. They're beating our ass. So that's what people got to really start asking themselves. What else is wrong about what we're doing outside of the education? We got the education down pat, but what else can we do?
Okay. All right. We are almost at an hour. I want to respect your time. There are a few questions here, and then we'll wrap this up. Ray Alexander says, Diamond Dave, what is your training? What is your training in stock options investing? Could you provide details of your training and experience in stock options investing?
Okay,
Ray, I don't know if there's time for, go ahead.
We talked about this earlier. So Ray, what I would encourage you to do is go back on the video, and I spoke to how I learned how to trade. And I don't call it stock options investing. I call it trading. So we talked about, again, I think the terminology is where we're kind of losing things in the wording, right? So I don't classify what I do as stock option investing, because if I'm in a trade, I don't consider that an investment. I consider everything a trade. But if you go back to earlier parts of the video, I explained how I learned how to trade options.
Okay. T. Riddler says, hi, Dave. Is the content of your courses largely pre-recorded videos, or do you teach live sessions allowing for interactive Q&A pertaining to the subject matter?
So, Mr. Really great question. So I do have recorded, and we also do bi-weekly a live class. What I found is that there's a small segment of people that show up for every live class, and the majority of people that took the course never show up. So what I've done to put people in the best position to be successful, I've done a lot of work to make myself available, right? Because I know what it's like to be in college and you have questions and the professor don't have time to answer them, because I went through that myself. I know what it's like to be in school and you have questions and there's no way to get the question answered. So what I've done since 2022 is make myself available. But what I found out, Mr. Riddler, is that people take time for granted. They take opportunity for granted. And so on our live classes, there's a small segment of people that show up for everyone. And some people can't show up because of work, things of that nature. But I give people the ability to ask questions around the content, and I'll answer it on the live stream, get very few questions. So we got to really start asking ourselves, how much do we really want to be successful when people are trying to put us in position to be successful and we're not taking the opportunity that is being provided to us as if opportunity is infinite, because it's not. So what you'll find out from anybody that's dealt with me is I try to bend over backwards to help people, but that's not going to last forever. But I will be able to say when I did it 100%, and I tried to help as many people as I could while I was doing it.
Okay. All right. So it turns out the author of that book was Carter G. Woodson.
Carter G. Woodson, exactly.
Yeah. And then Ray has one more question. I think you've already answered this, but I'll read it nonetheless. He says, Dave, have you ever worked for a stock options trading investment brokerage firm?
So I've never worked for a prop trader or an investment bank, neither of the two.
Okay. All right. Diamond Dave, that's it. That's all I've got. Do you have any? Well, do you want to talk about your channel and where to find you?
Yeah, you can find me on YouTube, Diamond Dave. You can find me on Instagram, Diamond_Dave. I just want to really encourage people to cut the nonsense, and really start understanding that, like, you want to really take your economic situation seriously. It's bigger than you. It's really about the people that are going to be here when you're gone, and start really asking yourself, what is going to allow me to really be competitive in this environment? Or just say, I don't want to be competitive and I'm willing to take what other people are willing to provide to me. Right. And then just be cool with that. Don't complain and get mad. Just deal with that reality, because you're in a competitive environment. America was designed to be a competitive environment. Either you're going to compete against these other groups of people, or you're just going to take what they're willing to give to you. So decide what situation works best for you and just get comfortable.
Okay. So Dave, let me ask you something. So you said cut the nonsense. I know you said that you mentioned people being on panels for long periods of time. That suggests that a lot of people are wasting time here on YouTube, but also the election's coming up next year. Do you want to say a few words about, before you go, about what actually impacts the political system, voting versus economics? Because when you say cut the nonsense, I'm not sure if I heard that correctly, or if I'm repeating that correctly. We spend a lot of time voting as well, and that doesn't always seem to get the result that people think it's going to get.
Okay, so can you repeat the question real quick?
So in other words, there are a lot of things that people are doing that aren't getting the desired result. So, does that go for things like voting as well? When you say this is a competitive country, that there are things that our people need to do besides just vote, right? Such as learn about markets, such as get a better handle on economics and understand how this environment and information are curated. You know what? Maybe it'll come clear to me afterwards when we finish.
Okay, so I would ask this question. That's a great question. So this is what I would ask first. Who told those people that they could get their desired result from voting? So the people that believe that I'm going to vote and that's going to get me what I want, who told them that? What made them believe that that was what they needed to be involved in?
Well, I want to say people learn in their civics and their social studies classes, but also every election cycle, there's a huge push from everybody to get out to vote, get out and vote. It's your right, get out to vote. People died for it. And there's the feeling that that's gonna impact the change, and it's gonna cause the results that you want. So this might be a part of the curated environment you were talking about, and the curated information that's being given to us from the media and the political class.
Yeah, I mean, I just think, because one thing, if we look at voting, and you can go do research on this, to verify what I'm saying, is we see a large amount of participation on national elections. As we get more localized, the participation gets lower and lower. I know a brother out here in the Atlanta metro area, he talks about on local elections, you get like 5% participation. So we know that people really are not voting on the local. They're voting where there's the largest amount of noise around engagement in voting. So they're really not voting locally, right? They're really being engaged to vote on the national election. So we're getting ready to roll into a national election campaign. But where's their engagement locally? So then the question you want to ask is that, why are you not voting locally if you're about voting? Why are you only inspired or directed to vote nationally? So the next question you want to ask yourself is, where do you believe you have the most amount of political power? Do you have it nationally? Do you have it locally? Right?
Well, yeah.
So the problem is, I just think we need to do a discovery, but we know that the political space is dominated by large amounts of money. It's dominated by two really, really big political parties that have a large amount of power inside the United States, and they're able to control the narrative where they want it to go. So we talked about before, they create the environment, they curate it to get the conditions to get desired results that they want, right? So people that are caught up in that, they got to figure out a way to not get caught up in it. But the question you want to ask is that, if everybody's pro-voting, how come they're not voting locally? Because for local elections, the turnout is often dismal. So it's very easy to win a local election because, wow, most people are not going to vote anyway. So you ask most people, did you vote for your DA? If your DA is an elected official in your area, most people have no idea what you're talking about. Did you vote for the sheriff? They have no idea what you're talking about, right? But the sheriff determines how the jails get run, and the DA determines if police officers get prosecuted, they're involved in misconduct. But most people can't tell you who those people are in their county. So I just think, again, there's a lack of understanding of how these things work. Again, we go to civics. If people do, like where I'm from, they give you 1 semester of civics and 12 years of school. So you really don't know any civics. But you think you know civics, but you know civics at a level to at least go make a vote. But do you know enough civics to solve your problem? See, so if you go to school and you take civics, but it doesn't solve your problem, then you don't know enough about civics. right? So I think that's something we need to continue to examine. What we think we know, if we know it so well, how come it's not solving our problems? Right? Instead of just assuming we know something because we went to school and somebody else gave us a piece of paper that said that we know it. Well, how do you know it if it don't solve your problem? And so this is what we don't really want to deal with, because we've been socialized that if we do 1, 2, 3, we're acceptable in our society. But the question is, why do you think what you believe has made you acceptable is still not solving your problem? How long are you going to go without your problem being solved? Right? So again, when I talked about people wasting their time, that's a socialization thing. We've been socialized that sitting on panels for 6 hours is a solution to the problem. I don't think that's a solution to the problem. That's why I don't do it. But for the people that think that's a solution to the problem, that's what they go do. I'm not mad at them because that's their socialization. All right. So I'm speaking to the people that understand that this stuff isn't working and maybe I want to do something different. The people that are 100% convinced that what they're doing is going to work, I'm not mad at them. I just don't have anything for them.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. I'm just going to read this really quickly. Then we'll finish.
Okay.
T-Riddler says, civics was never taught in my K through 12 education experience. I don't think it's being taught in most urban public schools. Interesting.
That could be true. Yeah. And where I'm from in the state of Florida, when I was in school, you get 1 semester of civics, 1 semester of economics, K through 12.
Wow.
So we live in an environment that's dominated by politics and business. So you get a year's worth of that in 12 years of school.
Okay. All right. Well, we're just over an hour. Dave, do you have anything else?
No, sir. Appreciate you having me. I like what you're doing. I've seen some of your other work. I really appreciate the time and the effort that you're putting into it. And I want to really encourage you to just keep pushing forward and have a great 2024.
Okay. I appreciate that. You too.
No problem.
All right. Well, everyone, I'm going to go ahead and wind the string down. If you're new to the channel, please like, share, and subscribe. If you want to donate something, my Cash App and PayPal are below in the description box. You can leave a super thanks as well. Please consider joining my newsletter. That's in the description box. And yeah, everyone, I'm not going to go long on this outro here. So with that, have a good night. I'll talk to you again soon. I'll probably do something else before the end of the year, but it's about time for a break now. So as always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Always try to do your best. Take care, and I will talk to you the next time. Bye-bye.